Hello, you delightful individuals. Let's talk about games. No. Not those types of games. These types of games.
So you're our sergeant.
Yes, my friends, I'm talking about not safe for work games. Games that are very specifically to do with sex, coital engagement, the rumpy-pumpy, bumping uglies. You know, the old devil's tango. Being a sex educator, as I am, I realized that an awful lot of people in the world were getting their sex education from the world of pornography. Yes, my friends, sex education is so unbelievably bad that young people are learning from pornography. Now, I've said this many times, and I'll say it happily again. Pornography is the cinema of sex. It is specifically designed to be aesthetically pleasing for the viewer, for the person watching. I know a fair few sex workers, and I have to say, a fair few of them have told me that the positions that they are often in are not always comfortable, never mind pleasurable, but they're there so that the camera can get the correct angle to be able to see all the bits and pieces. And that's great for cinema. But learning sex education from pornography is like learning law enforcement and the justice system from the Marvel movies. It just doesn't work like that. And it's horrible. It's harrowing. A little while ago, Russell Howard did an entire piece on how teenagers were having sex with each other and they just thought it was normal that a guy finished on the woman's face. That was just their standard understanding of things, that at the end of sex, the guy finishes on the woman's face, which is bloody awful. Makes great viewing for an awful lot of people that enjoy that power play, enjoy that dynamic. And you know what? If you're into it, that's okay. That's all right. But as long as it's between consenting adults, it's all fine and dandy. Sure, 100%. But that is not what standard sex should be. Especially not finishing like that in such a degrading way as standard. I'm not here to kink shame. I just want to make sure that everyone realizes that that isn't the way it should always be, you know? But this got me questioning, and this got me thinking about other media. To go back in time and throughout the history of entertainment, obviously sex has been a forefront of leading the media system, leading the entertainment media systems. The reason why VHS won against Betamax in the early days of media capitalist warfare is because the mafia put pornography on VHS. Betamax was a better, more reliable system for media, but the mafia put porn on VHS, and therefore people wanted to watch more VHSs because then they had the option to watch pornography as well. It's the same for magazines. It's the same for video content. It's the same for streaming platforms. Look at the rise of OnlyFans and Fansly. All of these things have risen up because of sex. Like, sex sells. And if I can take a moment to just have a little soapbox rant moment, it's so frustrating to me that sex sells everything. Our entire adult lives are pretty much revolving around the fact that every advert is about sex in some way, shape, or form. And yet, anything between consenting adults is seen as bad. You can have entire documentaries about how a serial killer skinned someone alive and wore their flesh for weeks. But the moment you talk about consenting adults, no, 18, no, they're consenting adults doing things that they want to do with their bodies in a consenting way, and they're all over the age of 18 and they're doing it behind closed doors. No, 18, can't be having that. Can't be having that conversation. No, definitely not. It's something that I'm really quite passionate about, as you might have noticed, because of how little people want to work with the sex industry. And I'm not just talking about sex work. I'm not just talking about like cam models, OnlyFans models, etc. I'm talking about sex educators. I tell people I'm a sex educator, and they immediately are apprehensive about working with me. You turn around and say, oh, I'm a horror game enthusiast. No issues at all. It's mind-boggling to me. But anyway, the point remains. The sex is a taboo subject, and it's always been a taboo subject, and no matter how enlightened we seem to get, it doesn't stop being a taboo subject. And all of this made me start thinking about games. Computer games. In the early days, computer games were like arcades and stuff, and then through like the 80s and what have you, computer games were the stuff that nerds did because they couldn't get on the football team or whatever that scenario. But computer games over the years have become more and more and more accessible to so many different people. They're cool, they're intriguing. More people watch people on places like Twitch and YouTube. You can play with your friends across continents doing multiplayer games, playing stories together or fighting against each other. You can literally have entire communities building stories on roleplay servers. There is so much that is going on in the gaming world that is connecting people on such a fundamental level. And then you have charities like Special Effect, who are making gaming more accessible for people with disabilities, and it is genuinely inspiring to see. So what about sex? What about sex games? Because, of course, as I've said, sex has opened so many doors and led industries through media. It has literally sold products for all time. And that media consumption is educating, and sculpting entire generations of people. So with the rise of games and people playing games, and the slightly getting better but still extremely lackluster sex education in the world, what do sex games teach us? That is the question. Don't worry, I got your answer. You see, friends, this question has been on my mind since I started streaming on Twitch. You see, I have been a sex educator. I have been running adult events. I have been involved in the world of eroticism since I basically learned what sex was. I tried to learn as much as possible from the earliest possible age and have just become more and more fascinated by it. And when I started streaming on Twitch, I became more of a gamer. I never really played games before Twitch. I played the odd one here and there, but I was not like a gamer. Whereas now, I'm a gamer. And then I wondered, because I remembered all of the old Flash games that were rude and naughty and a little bit lewd and crass from when I was a teenager. And I wondered where they'd come. How far had sex games gone? What was involved with sex games these days? You know, a cheeky little not safe for work game, sexual content, what could be found there? And I have to say, I wasn't prepared. The horror! The horror! I was not prepared for what I found, friends. By any stretch of the imagination. Hi there, ValenVain from the editing suite here. I just wanted everyone to know that from this point of the video forward, we talk about some pretty triggering things. So just be aware that there is conversation around sexual assault. There is brief conversation around games including children. Or more specifically, not safe for work games, including children, and bestiality. I just want to make sure that everyone's okay, and if you don't want to watch the rest of the video, I will fully understand. So yeah, look after your spoons. Thanks. My Steam library, since becoming a live streamer, is excessive. It has got exponentially huge, and a large proportion of those games are now not safe for work games, because I was intrigued by them. It all started with Lust for Darkness, which was an erotic horror, and I was damnably intrigued with that. And then it kind of went, oh, well, what else is available? What else is around and out there, you know? And after I played a couple of games, I realized that it's a bloody minefield. Like, there is no real warning as to what kind of game you are going to get. You can kind of gauge it based on the trailers and the images and what have you, but in regards to content warnings, there's not really much going on there, you know? So it went from me playing a couple of not safe for work games to see what was going on there, see what they were educating people, see what was happening, to creating an entire directory of trigger warnings for not safe for work games. Let's talk about my directory, shall we? So the not safe for work game directory, this is it. This is it. It's significantly large, as you can see. And a lot of it is ongoing because I haven't played through everything yet. But as you can see, I have played through a hell of a lot of these games. And the plan is that eventually this will become a website that people can go on and check their trigger warnings. So if they're interested in a game or they would like to find a game that doesn't have certain things, they will be able to check their trigger warnings. That's the entire point. I've got the did I complete the game, the reason why I stopped playing it, completed, the developer, my rating, my review, which I also upload onto Steam so that, you know, people want to read the views there, they're there. The genre of the game, LGBTQIA, all of that kind of stuff. And then we get into the nitty-gritty bits of the sex. Like, is sex an integral part of the game? You know, does it include penetrative sexual intercourse? Is it consensual? Is it not consensual? You will notice across much of this, like, does it include non-human humanoids, aliens, elves, dwarves, anthropomorphized animals, furries, robots, that kind of thing? There is two columns, the consensual and the non-consensual. Why? Because I like to make sure I'm covering all of the bases, friends. Because guess what? Sexual assault is a massive trigger for a massive proportion of people. And the fact that something like this doesn't really exist is mind-boggling to me. So if you might be damnably intrigued by the concept of a not safe for work game, boom, there you go, triggered the hell out of, right? Now, this entire thing has got like aliens, animals, monsters, tentacles, body modifications, toilet play, impregnation, necrophilia, you name it, it's pretty much here. In fact, as I've been going through these games, I have had to add more and more and more columns because there's just so much that needs to be taken into account, including, unfortunately, much to my absolute disgust, bestiality with just animals, not anthropomorphized animals, just animals, and children. There's been a couple of the games that I've had to report on Steam because of their inclusion of characters who are under the age of 18. Yeah, it's pretty harrowing, to be quite honest with you. It's probably even more disturbing the way that some games get round it. Like, they turn around and say, oh, this is a halfling race, but they all look and act like children. It's just... I really struggle with the loopholes that some people go to when making these games. But while we're talking about harrowing things, let's talk about the non-consent, shall we? Let's talk about the fact that there are an awful lot of these games that involve sexual assault. Now, I don't know what I could have possibly been thinking when I thought to delve into the world of sex games on Steam. I assumed that with games having a certain level of moral value, a certain style of morality about them, that sex games would surely have to follow that core level of morality. However, I was extremely wrong, as we probably have guessed. Now, so far, I have played, or I'm in the process of playing, approximately 54 different not safe for work games. And of those 54 not safe for work games, there are less than 10 that don't include sexual assault. We are talking fewer than 20% of the games that I have played, the not safe for work games, that do not include sexual assault. There's a significant amount where it's like, oh, you lose a battle against this monster, the monster sexually assaults you. A realm of fantasy that some people really buy into. I'm not going to shame anybody's monster kink by any stretch of the imagination, but there are some games in there, some games in amongst that I actively stopped playing, didn't even complete, just actively stopped playing because I was like, no, this is just your character sexually assaulting people, straight up, manipulating and gaslighting and yeah, the whole scenario is absolutely fucking harrowing, to be quite honest with you. Now, I will say, in amongst those 20% of games, there are some really good games in there. There's some really good, wholesome, supportive, funny, entertaining games in there. One I really want to tell you about is Max Gentleman's Sexy Business, because it's brilliant. It's possibly the best not safe for work game that I've personally come across so far in my travels. Yeah, this game is absolutely fantastic. It's a business tycoon game that has a dating game element to it, and everything is consensual. Everything in it is consensual, including, right at the beginning, whether you want censored content or not. You can literally turn off or on censorship. So if you don't want to see the nudity, turn it off. No issues at all. Design your character. They don't have to be naked. It's great. It's fantastic. And we love that level of initial base consent. Do you want to see the not safe for work stuff? Great, you know? It also has LGBTQI representation. It's a dating game, so it's very, very entertaining in that regard. And there's just so much entertainment that goes on with it, you know? But the key thing for me is the humor and the consent. It's just beautiful. The representation, it's fantastic. And I love to see it. Very, very entertaining game. So yeah, if you're looking for a fun LGBTQIA not safe for work game to sort of test the water or what have you, this game here, absolutely fantastic. Brilliant, 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 brilliant. There's also a few that I've seen that have been quite kinky and also quite consenting. What are the chances? There are quite a few other games in there that have interesting power plays, but it's all within the realms of like BDSM, the domination side of it, where everyone who is there is consenting to be there and they push with the power plays and what have you. I would love to see a bit more usage of safe words just to kind of remind everybody that they're a thing and they're super important in every scenario, regardless of what your dynamic happens to be. Yes, friends, anyone who turns around to you and says, I don't do safe words, don't fucking play with them. Don't do anything with them. Just step the fuck away. Leave them be. Just like, do you know what? I'm out. That's not a way, shape, or form. Safe words are always important. It's like a condom. It's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Okay? So safe words. Yes, please. Come on now. And those ones I find really interesting because of the fetish element of them, because of the fantasy, the kink, the domination, the power play within those situations, you know? There are quite a few of them that are stories. And the stories are usually 9 times out of 10 quite loose. They're just like, here is a vague story to kind of connect it all together. But some of them have really interesting character development, really interesting dynamics, or at the very least, very interesting gameplay. There's some of them that have got peculiar puzzles that all fit together and it opens up various different scenes. There's some that have got really interesting character arcs and paths that these people take. And even some of like the horror games, for example, I mentioned Lust for Darkness before, like there is an implication of it being an erotic horror game, which is like, okay, it's an erotic horror game, so there's likely going to be SA in this, there's likely going to be sexual assault somewhere in this, but they do a really good job of having it as an implied thing as opposed to shoving it in your face. Not so much for the later game, Lust from Beyond. That one had an entire scene in it that was in it purely for shock value. It had no need to be in there at all. It added nothing to the storyline, and it really pissed me off because I really enjoyed the franchise until that moment, because it was an erotic horror that had eroticism and it had the horror element, and it just, everything that sort of crossed over those elements in a non-consensual way was just implied. It was in the background. It wasn't shoved in your face. And that way you could get through that without being triggered. Or at least I could get through that without being triggered. And it was a beautiful, interesting dynamic of doing it until they shove it in your face for shock value. And then it just becomes completely pointless. But I digress. My point is that in regards to the games, the not safe for work games, there are some really, really interesting situations. There are some really interesting games. There's some really interesting storylines. And some of them even measure up to not safe for work games. Games that you would casually play on Twitch, on YouTube, or what have you. They just have the added element of sex, like The Witcher 3 or Baldur's Gate 3. we all know that there's quite tantalizing sex scenes in those that people absolutely love. Similar situation with a lot of these games, only there's a lot more of them. A lot more sexy times, you know? I have to say, one of the bugbears that I have just purely from a, I don't know, arrogance point of view is probably the best way of putting it. I've got a certain expectation with things, is there's an awful lot of shite out there as well. An awful lot of bad stories with CGI skins pasted on standardized model so that all of the sex scenes look very, very similar. You can definitely see where people pull their materials from. Like, there's 4 or 5 games that I can immediately think of where it's like, oh, well, they're all exactly the same game, just slightly tweaked a bit. They're exactly the same CGI models with different skins posted on them, and boom, done. There it is. That's as good as you're going to get, you know? And then, of course, there is the AI franchises that are definitely pulling all of their artwork from AI. But I have to say that some of the stuff that's out there in regards to like aesthetics is bloody beautiful. It's a very good looking style of doing things, very pretty, very aesthetic, very pleasing to the eye, kind of like pornography should be, you know? And I've just remembered, how could I have forgotten that the level of detail that some of these developers put into these projects is evidently passionate. A passion project for a lot of these people because of the amount of detail. And I'm not just talking about graphics, but I'm talking about physics. I'm talking about purely down to physics. It's one thing to look at a scene and be like, okay, this is a sex scene. Oh, it's quite a nice looking sex scene. It's another thing when you've played a few of them to be like, oh shit, you've actually got the physics of how gravity would work on these parts of anatomy, or how no gravity, space sex, how that would all work on these parts of the anatomy, you know? It's not all just completely outrageous, though a lot of it is. Even though these games are available for an awful lot of people, I have to say that they do have prerequisites on Steam and all of these platforms where it does specifically say you have to be over the age of 18. You've got to be able to prove that you're over the age of 18 by being able to purchase it, etc. So there are prerequisites to make sure that young people don't get to play these things, which is good, which is the way it should be, because if they were learning sex from sex games, I feel sorry for the future of the human race. I'm not going to lie to you. I just feel sorry for them. It also has to be said, while I'm talking about platforms like Steam, that there will be an absolute cavalcade of stuff that they have to deal with. Like, developers will launch games all the time, and they cannot vet a game 100% of the way through before they put it onto their market. It's just not possible to do, unfortunately. So when I find a game that does have stuff that is illegal, I report it. I don't hold that against Steam, because I know it's not their fault. They don't have the capability to have 100% playthroughs from all of their staff on every single game that gets submitted into a Steam library, you know? So when I find these games, I review them, or review what I can of them, so that if it doesn't get taken down immediately, whoever comes to see it next can see my review and realize how bad it is, and then I report it. The ones I tend to report are anything that involves animal or children. And what I mean by children is anyone under the age of 18. There are a fair few of these games that come with warnings at the beginning of the game that say all of the characters in this game are over the age of 18, and I usually find that, especially with the animated ones, that it's like, this is like a catch-all, because some of the animation styles might make characters look a little bit more youthful. If you've watched hentai, you're probably aware of an awful lot of the stylizations of the illustrations that make people look far more younger than they actually are supposed to be. So a lot of them do have these catch-alls of everyone in this game is over the age of 18. However, despite that, if there is active evidence of characters that are under the age of 18 engaging in any of those practice, instant report. Characters having sex with animals, instant report. And I have to say that of all of the games that I have played, I've only reported 5 games, only 2 of which was because of characters under the age of 18. Going through all of this makes me extremely apprehensive, because it's a lot to talk about. Now, some of you might be asking, but Valen, why do you report these games when you don't report other illegal activity, like all of the sexual assault? And the answer is because of the fantasy of CNC, which is consensual non-consent. CNC does make me deeply uncomfortable as a person, me personally, just because of my trigger around sexual assault and how angry it makes me. But I'm not going to yuck somebody's yum. I'm not going to kink shame. The TLDR of CNC is consenting adults who are role-playing a scenario where sexual assault happens. They are all consenting to the situation, and they have all agreed beforehand how things are going to go down, and safe words are in place. So if the role-play gets a little out of hand, they can stop everything immediately with a safe word. All very consensual and above board, but it feeds into the fantasy of sexual assault. With that being a fantasy that is out there, I am not going to turn around and say that these fictional games with fictional SA involved are things that should not be, for lack of a better term, enjoyed. However, when it comes to characters that cannot consent, then I will report it. That's where I'm at with it, you know? Now, well, all of these harrowing tales and the roller coaster that has been this entire minefield of a subject, I know that a few people will be intrigued by the kind of games that I am playing. In fact, a few people on my streams have been asking whether there would ever be a scenario where I'd be able to live stream a not safe for work game on another platform or what have you, so that they could see it without having to buy it and indulge in all of the bits and pieces. And with that in mind, I come to my project. My latest project. Yes, friends, the Questionable Game Emporium. Yeah, the Questionable Game Emporium. Effectively, I realized that I was doing all this stuff anyway. I was playing the games, I was making the reviews, I was doing all of the trigger warnings and what have you. And it needs to be said, there's a fair few of the games I didn't complete, so I can't give confirmed trigger warnings and all of these things because whatever it was in the game disgusted me that much that I just had to fucking bail. But I've done my absolute best. But with all of that being involved and being there, I thought, do you know what? Why not record those games? Why not record them and put them out there for people to watch? So I started the Questionable Game Emporium. It hasn't been released yet. The first release is going to be on the 28th of July. The 28th of July. Basically, the way I'm doing it is there is going to be an ultra filtered version on YouTube over on the Questionable Game Emporium. Don't worry, I'll put all of the links down in the description below if you are interested. Then there'll be a censored version over on another platform, which will cost absolutely nothing to see. You want to go and you want to indulge in the storylines. You want to go find out what the situations are, what the gameplay is like, what the aesthetics are like. You want to go see all of the lewdness, but none of the rudeness. Then you can do that for completely free. None of these, either the ultra censored version that I'm able to put on YouTube, but I am able to put on YouTube given the terms and conditions here, or the censored versions of these stories are going to cost you anything, because I want people to be able to go and see these things for themselves without having to pay any money. Just completely free. Just do the thing. If you want to go see what the storyline's like, you want to go see what it's all about, you want to see whether any of the not safe for work games have piqued your interest worthwhile, then you can go do those things. You can go check those out. However, if you want to see the not safe for work content, if you want to see the X-rated scenes, then I have put those behind a paywall, because I would like to be able to earn something from all of the work that I do. As I said before, there's far too many ways to demonetize people that work in the world of sex, whether that be sex educators or sex workers. And therefore, I need to be able to pay my bills somehow, you know? So ultra censored content, completely free. You can go check it all out. Censored content, completely free. Go check all of the storylines out, the aesthetics, the art, and what have you. If you want to see the X-rated stuff, then that's going to be behind a subscription paywall, and that'll all be done and dusted, you know? That's going to be from the 28th of July, and it'll be releasing every Sunday thereafter. So every Sunday from the 28th of July, there will be another episode of something. So yeah, this video wasn't meant to be like a self-promo thing, but I've been meaning to talk about the not safe for work games for a really long time, because as a sex educator, the information is important to get out there, especially knowing that people are not getting good enough sex education in the world, and therefore they might be getting it from these games, and that's terrifying to me. So I wanted to do a video on this stuff anyway, and with me just about to release the Questionable Game Emporium, I thought it would be a good time to do it. I thought it'd be a good time to talk about it and let you know what was happening. And, you know, yeah, just get it out there. Get it out there. So, yeah, that's what it's all about. Friends, if you would like to talk to me about not safe for work stuff or see me do stuff that is completely safe for work, then check me out on Twitch. Twitch.tv/ValenVain for gameplay stuff. We tend to do just chatting streams on a Monday evening. Tuesday, we do one game that is normally pretty chill and fun and exciting. And then on Wednesdays, at the moment, we're playing like indie horror games because I am a big fan of indie horror games. So that's what we're doing over on Twitch. You can also check me out on TikTok, which I do whimsical facts about sex and do other little bits and pieces that I throw out there, just aspects of whimsy that enter my brain. Or you can check me out on Instagram, where you'll see more behind the scenes stuff like when I'm performing in cabarets, other whimsical things that enter my brain and what have you, that kind of thing. So yeah, these are my main platforms, other than this one, obviously. You know, this one's been a bit of a weird video because I realized that I've opened up to you all about a very questionable subject. Unsurprisingly, that's the reason why I called it the Questionable Game Emporium. It's a questionable subject, but if you have got this far in the video, I'd really appreciate it if you press that little like button. And if you would like to see more of my shenanigans and what have you, then click that jiggle little subscribe button as well. Why not? I do weekly videos and we talk about pretty much everything, and a lot of hedonistic endeavors are had, because this is the home of hedonism. You know how it is. Now, I realize that I have talked about a whole load of games that I have played. However, I'm intrigued by your games, friends. If you have games that are particularly intriguing, I love story games. I love storylines and what have you. If you've got games that have got really good storylines, or you have an interesting not safe for work game you would like to recommend, then I would love to hear about it. Please put the names down in the description below, or tell me about games that I should avoid. If there's games that you have personally experienced and you're like, no, definitely not under any circumstances, please put them down below and save me the trouble of having to scoop out my own eyes out of sheer anger. You know, I would really appreciate it. Thank you. So yeah, that's been an interesting video, but a video that I wanted to do anyway, just because it's something that I've been meaning to talk about for quite a significant period of time, because I talk about it all the time on Twitch. So it's just one of those things that needed to happen, you know? I'll be back next week, and next week's video is another toy review of a toy that I've been sent. So stick around for that. And until next time, friends, don't do anything I wouldn't do. Because if I wouldn't do it, I'll fucking kill you. All right?